Hello, welcome to our weekly live attorney chat. I'm attorney Desiree Koger Gustafson with Immigration for Couples. If you are new to our firm or our Facebook page, we regularly come on and do these weekly chats, sometimes more frequently, depending on what is going on in immigration law, just to deal with recent developments, sometimes questions that we are hearing recurringly during our consultations. And so today, we'd like to deal with a recent court decision. I've been hearing a lot of questions in regards to during consultations, in regards to a recent court decision, Munoz versus U.S. Department of State. So I thought we would talk about that a little bit today. If you're watching this live and you have questions, feel free to put those in the comments section, and I will try to get to those if I can today. If you are watching this on replay, certainly you can still comment. We do get those comments, and if it is something I can respond to briefly, I will do so. Otherwise, it might show up in another one of these weekly attorney chats. So again, today, let's talk about that recent court decision because it has come up in a couple of my consultations. And this decision, Munoz versus U.S. Department of State, actually was a Court of Appeals review of a Ninth Circuit ruling. And we're going to discuss basically two avenues. One, why it's important, and two, does it help my case? That really are the two questions that I hear most frequently. And in reading that court decision, it's a lot of legalese in that court decision. And so let's talk a bit about why it's important. A little bit of background is this is applicable in our situation because of what we do. The nature of what we do really is dealing with couples and helping them successfully navigate the immigration process to be able to be joined and live together and start a life here in the U.S. So this was actually an I-130 filing. So it was a marriage-based relationship. There was a U.S. citizen spouse and children even, and the other party, the beneficiary, had lived in the United States for 10 years or so, and then exited the U.S. in order to process that spousal visa. It was denied. The visa was denied. And basically, it took them 3 years to get a little more specificity as to the reason for that denial. And that is somewhat common in that the consular posts will just state a statute that addresses maybe a certain type of inadmissibility or reason why they are not admissible. And so one of the reasons why this is important is consular posts have been very notorious for relying on the non-reviewability, meaning their decisions can't be reviewed by a court. There are some exceptions to that, and this case really gets to the heart of those exceptions. Like, yes, and a lot of it is legalese, of course, but just know that there are some exceptions to that reviewability. And some of that being basically the non-reviewability is very broad, but if you have a liberty interest, which there are many fundamental rights, rights to raise your children, care control of your children, and then a liberty interest or a liberty right to marry who you want to marry and to be able to live in your country. Also, the other thing that's kind of an exception to that broad non-reviewability of a consular's decision is that there be a legitimate and a bona fide reason for denying that visa. And basically, the court found here that giving that reason, while it may have been bona fide at the time, 3 years later was maybe too long. And so there is a time frame there. And as we know with everything in the law, everything is gray and it's based on an argument on whether or not you would be successful at determining if that was reasonable or not. But usually, in theory, somewhere around a year probably would be deemed to be admissible or be reasonable. definitely the court found 3 years was not. So that's how and why this case is important, is that there is some there's broad discretion on behalf of our officers in regards to immigration law, but there is some reviewability with the courts. So let's move to that second all-important question of, does this help my case? Well, the fact of the matter is that, and this would be for any type of law, is it helps your case, yes, in theory, in that it's a good reminder that there are limits to power, limits to discretion, and in hopes that it would keep everybody kind of on that right playing field. However, for the average person, it's going to be difficult to really effectuate if there is an issue that comes up at a consular post based on this decision, because you essentially have to file sometimes a court case or a mandamus action or something in court that would then cause that consular post to kind of wake up and listen to past case reviews or past case decisions. And that really is kind of broad with regard to any type of law. The case law is only as good as whether or not you have the means and the time to be able to file a court case and get your your argument heard, for lack of a better term. So there is some limits on it. It's a good reminder, and really we kind of hope that those kinds of decisions will keep people on the right path to making decisions or being responsive in their roles. But it also know that the government, of course, has a very large litigation department, and that they have lots of funds behind them, whereas the average person may not necessarily have those means to be able to file things all the time to try to shake loose their case or to try to get a bona fide reason stated to them so that they can work to overcome that. And that's, again, why it's so important and critical to make sure that you have good advice in the beginning, to make sure if you are exiting the country that there are remedies and that you understand the risks. I hope you have found this helpful. And if we have a lot of resources on our webpage, www.immigrationforcouples.com. If you click on the resources tab, lots of videos that kind of explain just little nuances in the immigration field and law that might be helpful to you. So please like and share if you know of someone who may be interested in our firm or in this particular topic. Of course, if you are watching this on replay, please comment #replay. We will look to see you next week at the same time for our next live attorney chat. Thank you for joining me.